Most people hear a baby cry and think someone else will handle it. That's what my manager used to say whenever customers complained about noise outside the restaurant. It wasn't our problem, not our business, not our responsibility. I believed that too. Until the night I didn't walk away. My shift had ended 40 minutes ago, but I was still out back, standing in the narrow alley behind Rosewood Grill, counting the last of my tips under a flickering security light. It was late October, cold enough that my breath came out in thin white clouds, the kind that disappear before you can even see them fully form. My feet ached from 10 straight hours of carrying trays, my shoulders tight, my mind already halfway home to my tiny studio apartment 3 blocks away. That's when I heard it. At first, it didn't even sound real. Just a thin, broken noise, almost swallowed by the hum of the city and the distant traffic rolling down 8th Avenue. I froze, one hand still clutching crumpled dollar bills. The sound came again, softer this time, fragile, like something that wasn't sure it had the strength to keep going. I should have ignored it. I knew that even then. Alleys in this part of the city weren't places you went looking for trouble, and whatever that sound was, it wasn't mine to fix. I actually took a step toward the exit gate. Then it came again, sharper, desperate, and something inside me shifted. Okay, I whispered, even though there was no one there to hear me. My shoes scraped against damp concrete as I turned back, scanning the row of dumpsters lined against the brick wall. The smell hit first. Old food, sour milk, something metallic underneath it all. My stomach tightened, but I kept moving, slower now, each step heavier than the last. The sound was clearer here. Not just a noise anymore. A cry. A baby. That realization hit me so hard I actually stopped breathing for a second. No, that's not possible, I muttered, shaking my head like I could undo what I was hearing. But the crying didn't stop. It trembled through the cold air, weak and uneven, like it was fighting to exist. My hand started to shake as I reached the 3rd dumpster. The lid was slightly open, just enough for a thin strip of yellow light to slip inside. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at it, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. This was the moment where I could turn around, walk away, pretend I never heard anything. No one would know. No one would blame me. But the crying, it was fading. That's what made the decision for me. I stepped forward, grabbed the cold metal edge, and lifted the lid. The smell intensified, sharp and overwhelming, but I barely noticed. Because there, buried under a torn black trash bag and a stack of flattened boxes, was a bundle wrapped in something thin and damp. It moved. Barely. Another cry slipped out, weaker than before. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. Hey, I'm here, I said quickly, my voice shaking as I climbed halfway in, ignoring the mess, the cold, everything. I pushed the trash aside, my fingers clumsy with panic until I could finally reach the bundle. It was so small, too small. When I pulled it free, the thin fabric slipped just enough for me to see a tiny face, pale and trembling, eyes squeezed shut, lips quivering in the cold. A newborn. I sucked in a sharp breath, my heart racing. Oh my God. I wrapped my coat around the baby without thinking, pulling them close against my chest, trying to shield them from the night air. They were freezing. I could feel it through the layers. Stay with me, I whispered, my voice barely holding together as I pressed them closer, as if I could somehow share my warmth, my heartbeat, anything. The crying softened, just a little. And in that moment, standing in the alley with a stranger's child in my arms, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Nothing about my life was going to be the same after this. I did not think. I just ran. The alley blurred behind me as I pushed through the metal gate and stumbled onto the sidewalk, clutching the baby tight against my chest like letting go for even a second would make them disappear. My fingers fumbled for my phone, nearly dropping it before I managed to unlock the screen. 911. What is your emergency? The operator's voice was calm, steady, like this. Was just another call in a long shift. I found a baby, I said, breathless, my words tumbling over each other. A newborn, I think. They were in the trash behind Rosewood Grill on West 47th. They are freezing. I do not think they have been there long, but they are really cold. There was a brief pause. Then the operator's tone sharpened just slightly. Are they breathing? I pulled the coat back just enough to check, my hands shaking so badly I had to steady them against my own arm. The baby's chest moved, small and uneven, but there. Yes, yes, they are breathing, but it is weak. Stay on the line. Help is on the way. Keep the baby warm. Skin to skin if you can. I did not hesitate. I shifted the code, pressing the tiny body closer against me, tucking them under my uniform shirt despite the cold air biting at my skin. You are okay, I whispered, more to myself than to them. You are going to be okay. Minutes stretched like hours. Every passing car made my heart jump. Every second without sirens felt too long. The baby let out another soft cry, weaker now, and panic tightened in my chest. Hey, stay with me, I murmured, rocking slightly, the way I had seen mothers do in the restaurant when their kids got fussy. I had never held a baby this small before. Never felt something so fragile in my arms. It was terrifying, and at the same time, it felt like the most important thing I had ever done. Then I heard it. Sirens. Faint at first, then growing louder, cutting through the night. Relief hit so hard my knees almost gave out. I hear them, I told the operator, my voice cracking. Good. Stay where you are. They will come to you. Red and blue lights washed over the street a moment later, reflecting off the restaurant windows, turning everything into a blur of color and motion. The ambulance pulled up fast, doors swinging open before it had fully stopped. 2 paramedics rushed toward me, their movements quick but controlled. You found the baby? One of them asked, already reaching for a thermal blanket. Yes, I said, carefully shifting the baby into their hands, my arms suddenly feeling empty the second they were gone. They were in the trash. I do not know how long. The paramedic nodded, checking vitals with practiced efficiency, wrapping the baby in layers of warmth. You did the right thing bringing them out here. Another 10 minutes, and this could have been very different. The words settled heavy in my chest. 10 minutes. I swallowed hard, watching as they secured the baby onto a small stretcher, attaching monitors that beeped softly in the background. Are you coming with us? The second paramedic asked, glancing at me. I hesitated for half a second, just long enough for doubt to try and creep in. This was not my responsibility. I had done enough. I could walk away now. Go home. Pretend this was just a strange, exhausting night. But then the baby made a small sound, barely audible over the noise around us. And that was it. Yes, I said firmly, stepping forward without thinking. I am coming. The ride to the hospital was a blur of motion and sound. I sat on the narrow bench, hands clenched in my lap, watching every small movement the baby made, every flicker on the monitor. One of the paramedics worked quietly, adjusting blankets, checking numbers, speaking in low, reassuring tones that filled the space. I barely heard any of it. All I could think about was how close this had been, how easily I could have walked away. When we finally pulled into the emergency entrance, the doors burst open again, and a team was already waiting. They moved fast, transferring the baby inside under bright lights that made everything feel too sharp, too real. I followed without being asked, stopping just inside the hallway as they disappeared through a set of double doors marked restricted. And for the first time since I heard that cry, I was not sure what to do next. So I stayed, because walking away did not feel like an option anymore. I learned something about hospitals that night. Time does not move the same way inside them. Seconds stretch, minutes blur, and everything smells like antiseptic and quiet panic. I stood just outside those double doors, my hands still cold even though I had been inside for several minutes, staring at the red sign that said authorized personnel, only like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. People moved around me in quick, practiced steps. Nurses, doctors, families with tired eyes and worried faces. No one looked at me. No one asked why I was still there. I probably looked like I belonged, just another person waiting for news they were not ready to hear. I sat down after a while, not because I wanted to, but because my legs stopped cooperating. The plastic chair felt too hard, too real. I kept replaying the alley in my head. The sound. The moment I almost walked away. My stomach tightened every time I thought about it. 10 minutes, the paramedic had said. 10 minutes, and everything could have been different. I pressed my palms together, trying to stop the shaking that had not fully gone away. After what felt like forever, but was probably less than 30 minutes, the doors finally opened. A doctor stepped out, pulling off his gloves, scanning the hallway like he was looking for someone specific. Our eyes met by accident. "Are you here for the infant that just came in?" he asked. His voice was calm, but there was something behind it. Urgency, maybe. I stood up too fast. Yes. I found them. Saying it out loud made everything feel more real. He nodded once, like that confirmed something for him. You got the baby here in time. Body temperature was dangerously low, but we are stabilizing. Breathing is improving. I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. My shoulders dropped slightly, the tension easing just enough to let relief slip through. Can I see them? I asked before I could stop myself. He hesitated, just for a second, then gave a small nod. Briefly, the room was smaller than I expected. Bright lights, soft beeping from machines, and in the center, a clear plastic bassinet surrounded by equipment that looked too big for something so small. I stepped closer slowly, like moving too fast might somehow disturb the fragile balance keeping that tiny body alive. The baby was wrapped tightly now, layers of hospital blankets replacing my coat, a small cap covering their head. Their face looked different under the light. Less gray, still pale, but stronger somehow. I reached out without thinking, my fingers hovering just above the blanket before I finally let them rest gently against it. Hey, I whispered. The word felt too small for everything I was trying to say. One of the monitors beeped softly, steady, rhythmic. Alive. That was all that mattered. They are stable for now, the doctor said quietly from behind me. We still need to run tests. There is no identification, no records. We will notify authorities. Authorities. The words settled heavily in the air. Of course they would. This was not normal. None of this was normal. I nodded, even though something in my chest tightened at the thought of strangers stepping in, taking over, deciding what happened next. I did not know why that bothered me so much. It should have been a relief. It meant the baby would be safe. It meant professionals would handle it from here. So why did it feel like I was about to lose something? I stayed there longer than I should have, watching the rise and fall of that tiny chest, counting each breath like it mattered. Maybe it did. I was so focused on that small, steady rhythm that I did not notice the change in the room at first. It was subtle. The way the nurse near the door suddenly straightened. The way the doctor's voice dropped mid-sentence. The shift in the air, like something heavier had just entered the building. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Not rushed like everyone else in the hospital. Controlled. Deliberate. I turned slightly, just enough to see the reflection in the glass panel before the door. A man stood there, tall, perfectly still, dressed in a dark suit that looked like it belonged somewhere far from this place. He did not knock. He did not ask. The door opened for him anyway. And in that moment, without anyone saying a word, I understood something I could not explain. This was not just someone visiting. This was someone the room itself made space for. His eyes moved once, scanning everything, before settling on the bassinet. Then, slowly, they shifted to me. And the way he looked at me made it clear. I was no longer invisible. No one spoke for a full second after he stepped inside. It was not silence in the usual sense. The monitors were still beeping, machines. Still humming, but everything human seemed to pause around him, like the room itself was waiting for permission to continue. He did not look rushed. He did not look worried. He just walked in like he already knew the outcome. His eyes went straight to the bassinet, not even glancing at the doctor who instinctively moved aside. That alone told me everything I needed to know about who he was in this space. Important did not even begin to cover it. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry, my fingers still resting lightly on the edge of the plastic bassinet. For a second, I considered stepping back, creating distance, making myself smaller in the room. But something held me in place. Maybe it was the baby. Maybe it was the way he had looked at me. Like I was part of the situation now, whether I understood it or not. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could see the details. Dark hair, perfectly in place despite the late hour. A suit that fit like it had been made specifically for him. No wrinkles, no hesitation in his posture. Control, in every sense of the word. His gaze lowered to the baby, and for the first time, something shifted. It was subtle, so subtle I almost missed it. His expression did not soften exactly, but the intensity changed. Focus sharpened into something more precise, more personal. Temperature, he asked, his voice low and even. Not loud, not demanding, but it carried in a way that made it impossible to ignore. The doctor answered immediately. Rising. Still below normal, but responding well. Breathing has stabilized. The man nodded once, like that was all he needed. Then his eyes moved again. Back to me. This time, he did not just look. He studied. I felt it in the way my shoulders stiffened, in the way my heartbeat picked up without my permission. You found him, he said. It was not a question. I hesitated, then nodded. Yes. My voice sounded smaller than I expected, but I did not look away. Something in me refused to. His gaze dropped briefly to my coat, still draped awkwardly around my shoulders, then back to my face. Where? Behind the restaurant where I work, I said, forcing the words out steadily. In the alley. He was in the trash. The room seemed to tighten around that statement. The doctor shifted slightly. A nurse glanced down at her chart, but the man in front of me did not react the way I expected. No visible anger. No shock. Just a stillness that felt heavier than anything else. How long was he there, he asked. I do not know, I admitted. I heard him crying. I stopped myself before finishing that sentence. Almost walked away. The words felt wrong now, like something I was not allowed to say in front of him. His eyes held mine for a second longer than comfortable, like he was reading something beneath the surface. Then he gave a slight nod. You did not. It was not praise. It was not gratitude. Just a statement. A fact. But somehow, it landed harder than anything else he could have said. I let out a slow breath, my fingers tightening slightly against the edge of the bassinet. Is he? I hesitated, then tried again. Is he your child? The question slipped out before I could stop it. The doctor went still beside me. The nurse froze mid-movement. I realized too late that maybe I should not have asked that. But it was too late to take it back. The man did not seem offended. If anything, his expression became even more controlled. Yes, he said simply. One word. No explanation. No elaboration. Just certainty. My chest tightened. I looked down at the baby again, then back at him. Nothing about this situation made sense, and yet, somehow, it felt like everything had just clicked into place. The way he had walked in, the way the room had reacted, the way no one questioned him. This was not just a father. This was someone whose presence changed things. He should not have been there, I said quietly, more to myself than to him. But he heard it. I could tell by the way his gaze sharpened just slightly. No, he replied, his voice dropping just enough to carry something deeper beneath it. He should not have. And in that moment, I understood something else. This was not over. Not for him. And definitely not for me. The word yes did not echo in the room, but it stayed with me anyway, heavy and impossible to ignore. I looked back at the baby, then at him. Again, trying to reconcile the two things that did not seem like they should belong in the same world. A newborn, fragile and quiet under hospital lights, and a man who carried something else entirely in the way he stood, the way people moved around him without being told. Does he have a name? I asked before I could stop myself. The question felt too personal, but silence felt worse. He did not answer immediately. His gaze shifted back to the bassinet, studying the small rise and fall of the baby's chest like it was the only thing in the room that mattered. Noah, he said finally, the word quiet but certain. I nodded, repeating it softly in my head. Noah. It fit somehow. Stronger than he looked. The man stepped closer, just enough that he could rest his hand lightly on the edge of the bassinet. He did not touch the baby, not yet. Just stood there, watching. I wondered if he was afraid to. Not in the way people usually think of fear, but in a quieter way, like this was something too important to do wrong. He responded to your warmth, the doctor said, trying to fill the silence. That helped stabilize him before we got him on proper support. The man did not look away from Noah. Then she stays, he said. It took me a second to realize he was talking about me. I am sorry, I asked, blinking. His eyes moved back to mine, steady and unreadable. You stay, he repeated, like it was already decided. My stomach tightened. I do not think that is necessary, I said carefully. He is stable now. You are here. The doctors, he responded to you. He interrupted, not raising his voice, but somehow still cutting through mine. That matters. The room felt smaller suddenly. I glanced at the doctor, expecting him to step in, to say something about hospital policy or boundaries. But he did not. He just looked between us, uncertain, like he was weighing something he did not want to say out loud. I have work in the morning, I added, trying to sound reasonable, normal, like this was a conversation between two regular people. I am just a waitress. I did what anyone would do. His expression changed slightly at that. Not softer. Sharper. No, he said. Not everyone would. Have. The words landed quietly, but they hit harder than anything else he had said. Because he was right. I knew he was right. I swallowed, my fingers curling slightly against the plastic edge of the bassinet. That does not mean I belong here, I said. His gaze held mine, unblinking. For now, he replied, it does. There it was again. Not a request. Not a suggestion. A statement that felt like it carried weight beyond the room we were standing in. I felt my pulse pick up, a mix of frustration and something I could not quite name. You cannot just decide that, I said, a little more firmly this time. A small pause followed. Not tense exactly. More like a shift in balance. He studied me again, like he had earlier, but this time there was something different behind it. Consideration, maybe. Or calculation. Then, unexpectedly, he inclined his head slightly. Not in surrender. Not even in agreement. Just acknowledgement. You can leave, he said. The words surprised me enough that I did not respond right away. But you will not, he added, his voice quieter now, almost thoughtful. I frowned, my brows pulling together. And why would you assume that? He glanced at Noah, then back at me. Because you came back for a sound no one else heard, he said simply. My chest tightened again, but this time it felt different. Not panic, not fear. Something deeper. Something that made it hard to argue. I looked down at Noah, at the tiny, steady movement of his breathing, at the way his hand shifted slightly under the blanket like he was reaching for something he did not even know he needed yet. I should have left. I knew that. I had every reason to. But my feet did not move. And the worst part was, I did not think they were going to. I did not leave. I told myself I would, that I just needed a few more minutes, just until I knew he was stable, just until someone else took over. But minutes stretched, and somehow I was still standing there, my hand resting lightly against the bassinet like it was the only thing anchoring me to the room. Noah shifted under the blankets, a small movement, barely there, but enough to make me lean in without thinking. Hey, I whispered again. Softer this time, like the word itself could keep him steady. The monitor responded with the same quiet rhythm, steady and consistent, and I found myself matching my breathing to it without realizing. Inhale. Exhale. Stay calm. Stay here. I became aware of him again when he moved. Not abruptly. Never abruptly. Just a slight shift in position, a step closer, close enough that I could feel the presence of him at my side without having to look. It was strange how noticeable it was, how the air seemed to adjust around him. He trusts you, he said. I blinked, glancing at Noah before looking up at him. He is a newborn, I replied quietly. I do not think he has a concept of trust yet. For a moment, I thought he might dismiss that. But instead, his gaze lingered on Noah, thoughtful in a way I had not seen before. Instinct, then, he said. It is not random. I did not know how to respond to that. It felt too heavy for something so simple. So I looked back at Noah instead, watching the slight rise and fall of his chest, the way his tiny fingers shifted under the blanket like he was reaching for something invisible. What happened? I asked before I could stop myself. The question hung between us, quiet but impossible to ignore. How did he end up there? For the first time since he walked in, there was a pause that felt different. Not controlled, not measured, just still. I felt it more than I saw it. Something behind his calm surface, something deeper, tightening just slightly. That is being handled, he said finally. The words were precise, chosen carefully. Not an answer. Not really. I let out a slow breath, nodding once, even though it did not satisfy anything inside me. Someone left him there, I said softly, more to myself than to him. Someone made that choice. His eyes shifted to me again, sharper now, like my words had touched something they were not supposed to. Yes, he said. Just that. No emotion. No elaboration. But the way he said it made my chest tighten. Not because of what he was saying. Because of what he was not. I looked down at Noah again, at the small, fragile life that had somehow survived something it never should have had to face. He deserves better than that, I murmured. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Silence followed. Not uncomfortable. Just present. Then, unexpectedly, he spoke again. He will have it. There was no hesitation. No uncertainty. Just certainty so complete it almost sounded like a promise carved into stone. I glanced at him, searching for something in his expression, some sign that this was more than words. But all I saw was control. Control, and something else beneath it that I could not quite name. You sound very sure, I said quietly. His gaze held mine, steady and unwavering. I do not deal in maybes, he replied. My heartbeat picked up slightly at that, not from fear exactly, but from the weight of it. The way he said things like they were already decided. The way the room seemed to agree with him without question. I looked back at Noah, at the tiny life caught between two completely different worlds, and for the first time, I realized something I had not let myself think about before. This was not just about a baby being saved. This was about what came next. And whatever came next, it was not going to be simple. I tightened my grip slightly on the edge of the bassinet, grounding myself in something real. Because standing there, between the quiet rhythm of a newborn's breath and the unspoken weight of the man beside me, I could feel it. Something had already started, and I had stepped into it the moment I chose not to walk away. It started with something small. Not a sound, not a movement, just a feeling. The kind that settles in your chest without asking permission, quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. I did not know how to explain it, even to myself. Nothing in the room had changed. The monitors still hummed. The lights still buzzed faintly overhead. Noah still breathed in that steady, fragile rhythm I had memorized without trying. And yet, something was different. I straightened slightly, my fingers tightening against the bassinet. "Do you feel that?" I asked before I could stop myself. The question sounded strange the second it left my mouth, but I could not take it back. He did not answer right away. His gaze shifted, not to me, not to Noah, but toward the door. That was when I noticed it too. Not the door itself. The people beyond it. Shapes moving past the glass panel. Too many. Too deliberate. Not like hospital staff rushing from one place to another. These movements were slower. Controlled. Watching. My stomach tightened. "Are those yours?" I asked quietly, glancing back at him. It was the only explanation that made sense. The kind of presence he carried did not come alone. He did not confirm it, but he did not deny it either. "Stay here," he said, his voice low, precise. It was not a suggestion. It was not concern. It was instruction. I frowned slightly. "I am already here," I replied, a hint of tension slipping into my voice. His eyes met mine again, sharper this time. "Then do not move," he said. Before I could respond, before I could ask what that even meant, the door opened. Not forcefully, not dramatically, just opened. But the air shifted the second it did. A man stepped inside, dressed like the others I had glimpsed outside. Clean, controlled, nothing out of place. But his eyes moved quickly, scanning the room in a way that felt practiced, calculated. He did not look at me first. He looked at him. "Everything is secured," the man said quietly. But there was activity near the alley. Someone returned. The words landed heavy, even if I did not fully understand them. I felt it anyway. The shift, the tightening of something invisible in the room. I looked at Noah instinctively, my heart picking up. "Return," I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. No one answered me. Not right away. The man in the suit continued, his tone steady but urgent beneath the surface. "We are handling it." No one got close to the hospital, but it confirms this was not random. Not random. The words echoed in my head, louder than they should have been. My grip on the bassinet tightened, my mind racing to catch up with something I was only just starting to understand. This was not abandonment. Not the way I had thought. This was something else. Something planned. Something intentional. I looked at him again, searching his expression, trying to find confirmation in something I could see. But all I found was stillness. Controlled. Focused. Like this was not new information. Like he had expected it. "You knew," I said quietly. It was not an accusation. Not exactly. But it was close. His gaze shifted to me, steady and unreadable. "I suspected," he replied. My chest tightened. "And you still let him?" I stopped myself, the words catching in my throat. He did not react to the unfinished sentence. Did not defend it. Did not explain. Instead, his attention shifted back to Noah, his hand resting lightly on the edge of the bassinet again. "He is alive," he said. Simple. Final. Like that was the only outcome that mattered. I swallowed, looking down at Noah, at the tiny life that had somehow become the center of something far bigger than I had realized. "That does not make it okay," I murmured. Silence followed. Not empty. Not passive. Just present. Then the man by the door spoke again. "We should move him soon," he said carefully. "This location is no longer ideal. Move him." The words hit harder than they should have. I felt it immediately. That instinct again. That pull I could not explain. "Where?" I asked, before anyone else could speak. Both men looked at me this time. Really looked. And for the first time since all of this started, I realized something that made my chest tighten in a completely different way. I was not just involved anymore. I was part of the decision. And whatever answer came next, I was not sure I was ready to hear it. The question hung in the air longer than it should have. Where? It sounded simple, but nothing about this felt simple anymore. The man by the door shifted slightly, like he was waiting for permission to answer. But it was not his decision to make. I already knew that before anyone spoke. Somewhere controlled, he said finally, his voice calm, precise. Private. Secure. I frowned, the words settling uneasily in my chest. This is a hospital, I said, glancing around at the monitors, the staff just outside the room, the steady rhythm of something that felt safe. It is already secure. He did not look at me when he responded. His attention remained on Noah, but I could feel the weight of his answer anyway. Hospitals have access, he said. Access creates variables. Variables. The words sounded clinical. Detached. Like this was a problem to solve, not a life that had just been pulled out of a trash bin less than an hour ago. I shook my head slightly. He needs care, I said, my voice quieter now, but firmer. Doctors. Equipment. You cannot just move him because it feels safer. That got his attention. His eyes lifted to mine, steady, measuring. Not angry. Not defensive. Just assessing. I do not act on what feels safer, he replied. I act on what is. The room seemed to tighten again, the quiet hum of machines suddenly louder in the space between us. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words did not come out the way I expected, because part of me understood what he was saying, even if I did not like it. I looked down at Noah again, at the small rise and fall of his chest, at the way his tiny hand shifted slightly under the blanket like he was reaching for something he could not see yet. He is still fragile, I said, softer now. Moving him could make things worse. The doctor, who had been silent until now, finally stepped forward. She is right, he said carefully. Transporting him too soon carries risk. We would need to prepare properly. Monitor everything. For the first time since this started, there was a moment of pause that did not belong entirely to him. A calculation. A weighing of options. I watched it happen in real time, subtle but there. Then he gave a slight nod. Then prepare, he said. Just like that. Not dismissing the concern. Not arguing. Adjusting. The doctor blinked once, clearly not expecting that response, then nodded quickly. Of course. We will need some time. You have it, he replied. His gaze shifted again, this time back to me. You will stay with him. It was not a question. It was not even framed like a request. Just another decision, placed into the room like it had always been there. My chest tightened, a mix of resistance and something else I could not quite name. You keep deciding that, I said quietly. His expression did not change, but there was something in his eyes now. Not softer. Not exactly. But less distant. You keep staying, he answered. The words landed deeper than I expected. Because again, he was not wrong. I could have walked away. At any point. No one had physically stopped me. No one had forced me to remain. And yet, I was still here. I looked down at Noah, at the fragile life that had somehow tied me to a man I did not know, in a world I did not understand. My fingers rested lightly against the bassinet again, grounding myself in something real. What happens after? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. His gaze held mine for a moment, longer this time. Then he looked at Noah. After, he repeated, like the word itself carried weight. A pause. Then, quietly, he lives. Simple. Certain. Final. It should have been enough. Maybe for anyone else, it would have been. But standing there, feeling the pull of something I had not chosen but could not ignore, I realized something that made my heart beat a little faster. This was not just about making sure he survived tonight. This was about everything that came after. And somehow, without ever agreeing to it, I had already become part of that future. I thought I understood what staying meant. I thought it was just about a few more minutes, maybe an hour, just until everything settled, until Noah was safe enough for me to step back into my own life like none of this had happened. But standing there, watching the quiet coordination begin around us, I realized I had been wrong. Nurses moved in and out with purpose now, checking monitors, adjusting lines, speaking in low, efficient tones. The doctor gave instructions that were followed immediately, no hesitation, no questions. It was different from before. Faster. Focused. Like the entire room had shifted into something more controlled, more deliberate. I stayed close to the bassinet, my hand resting lightly against the edge, not because anyone told me to, but because stepping away felt wrong. Noah stirred again, a small movement, his fingers curling slightly under the blanket. I leaned in without thinking. "I am still here," I whispered, the words automatic now, like they belonged to me as much as they did to him. Behind me, I could feel his presence before I heard him move. That quiet, steady weight that never rushed, never hesitated. "They will move him within the hour," he said. "Not to the room. To me." I nodded slowly, my eyes still on Noah. "You trust them?" I asked. It was not about the doctors. Not really. It was about everything else. There was a brief pause. "Then, I trust outcomes," he replied. I let out a small breath, not quite a laugh, not quite anything else. "That is not the same thing." "It is the only thing that matters," he said. I turned slightly, meeting his gaze. There was no arrogance in it. No need to convince me. Just certainty. The kind that does not ask for agreement. I looked back at Noah, at the tiny life that had already survived something he should not have had to face, and I felt it again. That pull. Stronger now. Clearer. "And me?" I asked before I could stop myself. The question surprised even me. His expression did not change, but his attention sharpened, focusing fully on me in a way that made everything else fade for a second. "What about you?" he asked. I swallowed, my fingers tightening slightly against the bassinet. "When this is done," I said quietly, "when he is moved, when everything is handled, what happens to me?" There it was. The question I had been avoiding without realizing it. The one that mattered more than I wanted it to. Silence settled between us, not empty, but measured, intentional. He did not answer right away. He looked at Noah first, then back at me, like the two of us were somehow connected in a way he was still deciding how to define. "You go back to your life," he said finally. Simple. Clean. It should have been reassuring. It should have been exactly what I wanted to hear. So why did it not feel like it? I nodded slowly, even though something inside me did not settle the way it should have. "Right," I said softly. "Back to my life. Early shifts. Late nights. Counting tips under flickering lights. Pretending that a sound in an alley had not changed everything." I looked down at Noah again, at the small, steady rise and fall of his chest, at the way his hand shifted like he was reaching for something he could not see yet. And I knew with a clarity that surprised me. I was not walking away from this unchanged. Maybe I could leave the room. Maybe I could go back to the same apartment, the same job, the same routine. But something had already shifted. Something I could not undo. "You are wrong," I said quietly. The words slipped out before I could stop them. His gaze held mine, calm, waiting. "About what?" he asked. I looked at Noah one more time, then back at him. "About me going back to my life," I said. My voice was steady now, clear in a way it had not been before. "That is not going to happen." For a moment, nothing moved. Then, slowly, something changed in his expression. Not surprise, not quite approval, but recognition, like he had been waiting to see if I would realize it on my own. "No," he said softly. "It is not." And just like that, without anything else being said, I understood the truth I had been circling since the moment I heard that cry. He might have ruled the outcome, but I had chosen the moment, and neither of us was walking away from it.